and we are live. This is the Black Powder Podcast. I want to thank everybody for listening, watching, whatever you're doing on the Firearms Radio Network, on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook. Um, this is the only real libertarian podcast. And I want to stress that because you got a lot of people that talk libertarian stuff, but don't live libertarian stuff. And I wanted to bring in my co-host today because this is like the libertarian version of the Wu-Tang Clan. We got all kinds of characters in our group, and we're going to be adding more. But, today we have Eric Parker, Bull Liberty, formerly of Duval, now in NC. How you doing, my brother?
I'm doing good. How about yourself, man? It's been a while.
It's been a while. It most certainly has. And you know what? It's been for good reasons because one, we have our one of our co-hosts, Michael White. He's running for office right now. Wait a minute. I'm sorry. Is Twitter telling me a premium account on Twitter is required to create a broadcast on their platform?
What?
So we're not live on Twitter right now because Elon Musk is telling us that I need to have a premium account. When did they do this? This is ridiculous. At any rate,
Well,
I'm not going to let
post it. We can post it later, right?
Yeah, we
It
can.
just won't be live.
It just won't be live, and I'm kind of upset because I just saw. I don't know if it's true. I didn't, and this is one of the things about social media. People, please do not believe everything you see, read, or hear on social media because it's about clicks, not facts. But I did see something to the effect that Elon banned Robert De Niro because of his woke agenda, and I have my own opinion on woke. But if you go out there and profess to be a First Amendment advocate, you cannot ban people who have opposite ideas than you. It just doesn't work like that.
Yeah. Just beat them with debate. You know what I mean? Beat them with conversation.
Yeah,
Bring
well,
better
yeah,
ideas to the table.
it's the best ideas should always win. And being that we have our sponsors on the Black Powder Podcast, but this particular episode, our sponsors are you. And we're going to ask you to sponsor Michael White, our co-host, that's running for state representative in the great state of Arkansas. And he needs your help. Now, I wasn't going to unveil this slogan until we had his telethon where we're going to do a fundraiser for Michael White. But libertarians need to start putting their money where their memes are. You can't just sit here and say you're about liberty, you're about this, you're about that, and not compete, which is a standard practice of capitalism. If you're not going to compete against your competitors, which are the Democrats and Republicans, don't call yourself a libertarian. We have to bring this into the fold with our wallets, billfold wallets, and not just go out there and make memes and make fun of these people. We actually we have to put the money in the pockets of the people that can actually affect change. And Michael White's race is the most winnable race as far as libertarians go in the entire country this election cycle. He's going up against a Democrat. There's no Republican running. It's just Michael White versus the Democrat. And they're trying to paint him as this radical, which I find ironic because this country was founded by radicals.
And, his race isn't just the most winnable race for liberty or for a libertarian candidate simply because he's running in a head up. If you look at the incumbent, they won their last election by, I think it was less than 1,000 votes. And this is in like West Little Rock, so pretty decent sized town, city. That's why it's so winnable. If he can get some mailers out, that's what I think he's trying to raise a few $1,000s so he can get mailers out, and he needs the money so that he can get, I'm sure he has his mailers designed already, but you got to get them printed, you got to get them mailed out, and he needs to get them out to early voters. He needs to get them out to absentee ballot voters. So that's why that's so important.
Yeah, and I want to expand on that for a second, because when I say, you need to, well, we just lost Eric, but I'm going to continue on. When I say we need to put our money where our memes are, I'm not talking you break the bank. We could do 5, 10, 20, $25. That's if you're struggling with life and whatnot. I understand. But if you can't give $5 for liberty, or $10 for liberty, or $20 for liberty, you're actually not going forward in your own best interest. Because people like Michael White, we got Eric back. It's all about incremental change in this country. And this country has always been about incremental change from its inception. But the liberty movement needs to step in that direction, where we're engaging in that incremental change, where we can help people like Michael White prove that libertarians can govern. And the best part about libertarians trying to govern is they want to leave you alone. And I don't think that's such a bad idea. We've done this Democrat Republican ping pong game with a hand grenade, and then when it explodes on one side or the other, they just throw another hand grenade in there and they start playing ping pong again. And America needs a viable third option, and I'll say this because that's the only way you're going to keep the duopoly uniparty honest. They don't have to be honest with you. All they have to do is say how bad the other guy is. And it's no longer about good ideas. It's about, if this guy gets elected, you're going to pay $14.95 for a dozen eggs. Or if this guy gets elected, or girl, you know, you're not going to be able to hide your daughter from drag queens and blah, blah, blah. It's the uniparty, they're more about the culture wars than the liberty wars, and libertarians about the liberty wars. Libertarians want you to be left alone. And Eric, you actually ran for a city council seat, correct? Under the
Yes.
libertarian flag.
As a
What?
registered libertarian, it was a partisan race. I was originally running against 3 Republicans and myself, and last minute I switched to a at-large seat because the guy was running unopposed. So that's and I ended up breaking records for a libertarian in Jacksonville. 34.5%, and what was it? 50 something thousand votes. I can't remember. 45. I don't know. 53,000 votes, I think, something like that.
Yeah.
But
okay,
and I waited till the last, or I didn't wait. It was hard to raise money after the first, year of campaigning and just doing the same thing. But then once I switched to that unopposed race, I got a lot of support. A lot of support from Republicans and Democrats in Jacksonville as well. A lot, you know what I mean? I appealed to people across party lines, but I didn't change, my message. I think so many people were coming off of 2020, were frustrated with the government, even at the local level. They remembered how a Republican mayor, Republican city council shut it down, shut our town down, our city down. So they were frustrated too. But that's what is inspiring about Michael White. First time I ever heard about him was his debate when he ran. I think it was for Congress in Arkansas. Dude put on a master class debate performance against 2 uniparty candidates, and really shined the light of liberty. You know what I mean? He was the light on a hill, and he set the bar high. You know what I mean? Right. I'm probably not the greatest. Probably wouldn't put on the greatest debate performance compared to Michael White, but we all have our strengths, and he's this great communicator, but he's principled. And if we could get him in office in Arkansas and then say, hey, look, this is the standard for running state level campaigns for libertarians. You know what I mean? Let him
Yeah.
set the bar. Let him publish his playbook, whatever. Share it to any candidates moving forward and say this is how it's done. But it doesn't start. But what's most important right now is fundraising. You know, we got a few more days left in this month. Let's see if we can get him a couple thousand raised. I've committed to send him $100. Like I said, if we could get 9 more folks to commit to that, or 10 or 20, we'll need several more people. But if 9 people can give $100 to Michael White, that'll be $1,000 that he'll have tonight. We'll see.
Yeah. And it amazes me because I profess we're going to get to this a little bit later on how I feel about the Libertarian Party right now, but I want to still have a game plan and roadmap that America can take as it stands right now to move more forward in this union, to make it more perfect. And Michael White is but an example of what we can do to achieve that. And while my good friend Eric has given $100 and I myself have given money to Michael White, I want you to know you don't have to give $100 if you don't have it. If you broke under the Biden economy, I understand. But if you want to start moving in the right direction where you don't have those particular issues, because libertarians fundamentally believe in economic freedom, and economic freedom is getting the government out of your way so you could do those entrepreneurial things that Michael White did to achieve where he's at right now, where he could run for office and support his family and go forward with the message of liberty. Give $5, give $10, give $20, give 30, 40, 50. And we have the link right here in you can see it right there at mwforliberty.com/donate. All right. So please put your money where your memes are. Put your money where your fundamentals are, because we do have to compete. And if you're not willing to compete against Democrats and Republicans, this is where we're going to be at until more Americans step up and say, hey, I don't like this. This doesn't represent me. I need to speak up, and you can voice your opinion with a few bucks. Just do it. Like to
Do
coin,
it.
do it now. Do it now. But going forward, we want to talk about why you should do it. And one of the main reasons you should do it is because what we're dealing with in society right now. Now, my good buddy Eric, he brought up the first this is now the second segment, and we wanted to talk about current events. And this is a tad bit not current, but it is current, with the attempted assassination of former President Trump. And I remember I was like napping on the couch, and my wife came to me and said, hey, somebody tried to shoot Trump. And I was like, no effing way. And I was like, that doesn't happen in modern America, because supposedly after 9/11, we had all this Patriot Act and all this other stuff where, government consolidated its power, and nobody is more omnipotent than the government. How could this even happen in America? So, Eric, what was your first thoughts when you heard that news?
I mean, I was shocked for sure. And then thank I don't thank God for, the internet and at the time X, because you had actual footage of people seeing the shooter before the shooting happened.
Right.
It was online in hours after the shooting. So then, like, the media And the establishment, they couldn't ignore the obvious mistakes that they made. Now, the irony of that is, here we are, how many days later, and there aren't any real answers to how our federal government was able to allow this to happen. That there is one positive thing about this, I believe, and it is that, I'm pretty sure it forced the secretary or whatever director of the Secret Service to resign, right? It forced her hand
Yeah,
because she was refusing to
he
answer
was gone.
questions. So that's one positive about that. As much as I dislike a lot of Trump's policies and his record as a president for 4 years, you know, that you're not, I don't know. There's a long history of assassination attempts in the
Right.
United States, and some more successful than others, I guess. But yeah, it
Well,
was shock. But it was also like like you said, complete and utter failure. You know, you've seen the meme from The Simpsons where he's in the classroom and he's like, "Say the line," and it's like, "He was on our radar," and they're all pointing at, like, seriously, they had all kinds of. And then, all right, I don't know what this is about, but I heard, like, after they raided his house, there were no spoons in the house. I don't know. Some weird stuff's going on here. I'm not
you know,
saying that, I believe in, that he was a patsy or whatever, but go look into JFK assassination stuff and you'll see why this is so fishy. That lone wolf shooting scenario, it's ridiculous. They saw, I don't know.
yeah,
Allegedly, they had seen the guy hours before and had him on their radar. Keep an eye on this guy, and they allowed him to get several shots off. Killed an innocent guy in the crowd, a dad, a firefighter. So that's heartbreaking. But yeah, I mean, that's as sad as it is in our news cycle. That's old news. Everyone's moved on. Everyone's forgot about it. We haven't had, maybe not forgot about it, but we
no,
haven't had an opportunity to get on the podcast and talk about it. You know what I mean? We just life,
right.
and we've been busy. And the point you made earlier, because Michael White's so busy with his campaign, he's probably door knocking on someone's house right now. That's why he's not here. So we've kind of been relaxing until after he wins his election before,
Right.
we really ask him to clear his schedule to come on the podcast with us.
Yeah,
His campaign is more important than this podcast to him right now. But we felt we needed to
yeah,
get together and come on and talk about some of the stuff that's happened in the last 100 days or whatever.
yeah. I got you. And I've been busy with my family as well. I got a kid that's a senior in college and a kid that's a junior in college. So this summer's been kind of rough. Um, as far as the Trump assassination thing goes, I lost a lot of followers previously when I said I don't necessarily believe in conspiracy theories. And a lot of people got mad at me for saying that. And I said it's because conspiracy theories tend to lessen the facts. And the fact of the matter was, in this Trump assassination attempt, there was a lot of stuff that went wrong. And to lessen the fact that these professionals who are tasked with one thing at these events, and I've always understood them to be rings of security, and there's typically between 3 and 4 rings of security, and they all have to be interconnecting and able to communicate. And you're going to leave the shortest shot, aside from where the Secret Service was, right next to the stage on that building. But you're going to leave a building with 100, and it was less than 150-meter shot, completely open with a direct angle on any potential target without anybody saying, "Hey, there's a rooftop right there that has a pretty legitimate angle and a shot at whoever's speaking at the podium." And I know a lot of our listeners and watchers are gun people because we're gun people. Less than 150-meter shot, with a rifle for anybody that's halfway competent is an easy shot, especially with the AR. That thing's going to be a dime. It's not
Yeah.
going to have hardly any drop at 150 meters less because I'm pretty sure it was less than 150 meters. But the drop on a round at that distance is going to be minimal. And so, when I was initially reading about this guy, they said he tried out for the rifle team at his high school, which I salute. Have a damn rifle team at your school. You never know when the government's going to get crazy. You need to have some people that can handle that. But supposedly he got cut from his rifle team because he wasn't a good shot and they considered him dangerous. But more the thing that actually disturbs me the most about that whole scenario, or were people saying that God touched Donald Trump and saved him from that assassin, but the other guy that was a firefighter that spent his entire adult life saving people's lives and being the guy that showed up under the worst situations died. That actually bothered me to no end, that they lessened his life. Like, God didn't care about him, he cared
Yeah,
about.
that's tough. And I want to maybe say, well, let's look at it like this. And I do believe if he had not missed and Trump had been killed, there would have been riots, protests there. Because
Yeah.
now here's my problem. The reason why that would happen is, and please, MAGA, don't get mad at me, but it's because y'all are worshiping this guy a little too much. You know what I mean? Like, don't get me wrong. I'm glad he's not dead. I got a lot
Yeah,
of friends and
nobody.
family. We got a lot of followers and fans that are going to end up voting for Trump this election. We know that. But, like, there definitely would have been, let's just say crap would have hit the fan. I'd heard
Absolutely.
some rumor that they were trying to do something to the RNC, and this. I know you said you don't like conspiracy theories, but I do. But allegedly, I think somebody told me something about like Ron DeSantis wasn't even going to go to the RNC convention, and last minute he rescheduled to make sure he was going to be there. You know what I mean? Like, it's just some weird stuff. I'm glad Trump didn't get killed, obviously. I think crap would still be hitting the fan right now.
Yeah.
Not from me and, my side of the coin, but I'm just saying. So that's where I feel like, I'm going to give people the benefit of the doubt whenever they say, oh man, God intervened to make sure
I got,
that didn't happen. But
yeah, I got you.
but I get your point too. Like, don't minimize the guy that actually lost his life. He had a whole family. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
But anyways,
it was it's difficult for me to, like, well, it's not, because I remember after Tupac got killed, Biggie Small said this, and I'm old enough to remember this the day it happened. He says Biggie Small said he didn't wish death on anybody because there's no coming back from that shit.
yeah,
And that's the same thing. I don't want to see Trump die. I actually find him entertaining, uh, in the sense that, yeah, he's entertaining to me, but I don't want him leading my country. And don't come at me, because to a certain extent, I don't feel that way about Kamala Harris either. I never felt that way about Joe Biden. I didn't feel that way about Trump when he was president. I didn't feel that way about Obama. I didn't feel that way about Bush. I didn't feel that way about Clinton. And you can keep going on
yeah,
until what decade you think I started paying attention to politics, and it was very young for me. So this is an extensive piece of experience that I have. I just never liked people who claim to be our leaders but don't lead us to liberty. They lead us to more government. And I
yeah,
always say, after 9/11, government became omnipotent because that shit scared Americans so hard that they felt like their only solace in peace was defaulting to the government, and that's when we really started to hero worship and do all that shit. And I know you were in elementary school, or how old were you when 9/11 happened?
I was in middle school. I think
Middle
seventh
school.
or eighth grade. Yeah.
Yeah, I was already out in the world doing things that you probably couldn't imagine at the time. I'm just trying to, because
Out
I forgot
out
your generation.
there,
You're a millennial, right?
uh, I was born in '88, whatever that is. I think
I'm
it's like
pretty sure you're in.
millennial.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you're. And I want to put this out there for everybody that's listening, watching, and everything. Millennials are the worst generation of Americans that have ever existed, and probably led to these further generations that suck, because millennials gave birth to 900 genders and all kinds of other shit. And I hate the culture wars, but I
Look,
just my guy Eric, he's cool people.
the only culture war that we will get involved in is the fact that millennials created the pellet smoker, and I have one, and I used it today to cook 2 ribeyes and 2 lobsters. All right, it's
Well,
multifaceted. I could use
I,
it more
I'm
than
I
just
want
to
to
smoke meat. Just
I want to
saying.
speak to my fellow Americans right now. A pellet grill is actually a backyard oven,
it
and
it cooks
typically
some
it's
dang
used
good.
by communists. Excuse me, Eric, I'm speaking. It typically is used by communists,
This is where I draw
and
the line.
I'm not going to say my brother Eric is a communist, but only stick burners, and I'll degrade to charcoal burners. They're legitimate grilling and barbecuing and smoking. Pellet
Well,
grillers are just basically ovens because it imparts no smoke flavor. It is completely un-American. Vladimir Putin, a former KGB agent, had a smoker before he became president of Russia. Before the Soviet Union broke up, Vladimir Putin was using pellet grills
I
in the
think you're
former.
making this up.
No, that is simply the truth. All right,
But
so I want to. This is our. What are we on, segment 3? Because
well, we can move on. Since you're wrong about pellet smokers, but go ahead.
no, I just don't want there to be beef after it's done, because I have far more insults to say about pellet smokers. And
Well, I
I just,
mean, look, I'll be asleep while my brisket's cooking while you're up maintaining your fire. So hey.
yeah, and then when I see the look on my patrons' faces when they're enjoying my delicious meat, and I mean that in every sense of the term, while they're just while they're consuming my delicious meat,
You know
and
what? We need a libertarian barbecue competition. Seriously.
that would
I'll
be
which
awesome.
I'd have to buy an I can't fly my pellet smoker to California, but that'd be
You
pretty
can,
cool.
yeah, and
Well,
that's
we'll
something
put
we
up
can we'll
my
work on
pellet
that.
smoker versus your stick burner. We can stay up all night, barbecue together, whatever, or
Have
day,
some
whatever, and then
surf.
have some guest hosts from
Yeah,
California, like Lars Mapstead or
yeah,
whoever, people from all over, come and judges try our meat. Let's work on
Lars.
that. All right.
Hey, I just want to say, Lars, we want our meat in your mouth. So I'm gonna cut
Yes.
this segment and make a little Lars video. Lars, we want our meat in your mouth. Come
All right.
down. Anyway, all right. So into segment 3, which is the election. And a couple days ago, I posted my opinion, and you also chimed in on it. I think if the election were held today, Vice President Harris would win the presidential election. Republicans will take the Senate, and Democrats will take the House. And I say that because of this. The whole presidential thing was solely based on an older guy versus an old guy. And people would like to say, well, Joe Biden, when he's old, he's the oldest guy to run for president. And they're like, yeah, that's true. But I always say Joe Biden and Donald Trump were in high school at the same time. There is not a significant divergence in their ages. And now that Joe Biden has dutifully dropped out, Donald Trump is the oldest man to ever run for president in the United States. And I think that's lost on people. And I think that's why I liken this, because, being me, amateur historian, I liken this to when Richard Nixon ran versus John Kennedy. And Nixon just looked at the old
Looked
guy
old.
with no energy and blah, 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 and was struggling to articulate a point and come to a uh, a reasonable conclusion on his policies and everything for everybody, not just his base, just for everybody. While Kamala Harris is just completely undefined and younger and has that energy. And I don't think Trump would is truly exploiting those weaknesses about being undefined. He just doing some broad based labeling, and I don't think that's going to work in November. I don't think it's working in August, and it's not going to work in November until he has a more pointed message about who he wants to, uh, label her as.
Yeah. Hey, can you pull up JT Campbell's most recent? So I want to make the point here. I was gonna make this point. Won the nomination with 0 votes, and I made a post about that. Like, I find it ironic that the Democratic Party and at their convention, all their speeches, like, this is more than an election. This is about defending democracy. That they didn't let their registered Democratic voters elect their candidate in a primary, in a Democratic primary. The irony of that, it's ridiculous. And you try and bring that up, they're like, oh yeah, but the delegates, and that's true. Like, the way the Libertarian Party does it is your delegates vote, but we usually don't have primary elections either because we don't have the resources to run two candidates in elections against each other. That's why we do it at convention. But Kamala was chosen; she wasn't elected. And that's my thing, is she was coronated, I guess is another word. Like, and the irony of 4 years ago, she was the least popular presidential candidate behind Andrew Yang, I think, in one of the polls. Like, she was 1 percentage point better than Andrew Yang, I think. Uh, and then there were headlines from like CNN and Fox News and The Hill and Wall Street Journal and stuff saying, after she was chosen as the vice presidential candidate, saying like, when is she going to be replaced? Like, she was that unpopular. She went from being the most unpopular, one of the most unpopular presidential candidates in the Democratic Party and VP nominees to the greatest person to run for president ever, according to the establishment media and the DNC. So that's my frustration, and we're gonna get into some of the other stuff too. But I think that whenever you posted that post about her winning, it makes sense. She's younger now. I wouldn't. She's a little bit better than of a communicator than Joe Biden, but so is every other human being that's at least graduated high school or got a GED. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but we haven't really seen her speak. I didn't watch the DNC convention. I don't
No,
even know. I'm assuming she spoke there, but I didn't
I
listen
I
to it.
assume that too because neither did I watch it. But I would like to remind everybody, because you guys aren't wrong that we're saying, yeah, she wasn't elected and vetted by the Democratic Party, but neither was Hillary Clinton, because Bernie Sanders in 2016 was leading in several polls and everything, and the DNC came together and told Bernie fuck off. Excuse my French, but they
Didn't
they
they
ran
like
him,
kick him off
they
the
ran him out.
ballot in several
They ran him out.
states?
They ran him out of their primary as well. So, and that's
Yeah.
the thing about the duopoly. I mean, you're it's very valid points that you're bringing up, but you can make a comparison to Trump's ascension in this particular Republican primary. He didn't participate in any debates or anything because it was automatically assumed he was going to win the nomination, and everything else was just a show. It was a better show than the Democrats put on, obviously.
Yep.
But that's the thing about the uniparty. It's the illusion of choice. You don't have a freaking choice. that party is going to pick who they want, regardless of where you feel on the thing. And you know, because if you look at the primaries, nobody ever gets 100%. It's usually 30 to 40% of the vote that the guy or girl that wins the state delegates or whatever. That's usually what it is. It's never a overwhelming majority or even a majority of votes. And then after it's all said and done, everybody has to coalesce around which candidate the party picked with 30 to 40% of the vote. You know, the vast majority of people is like, damn, I hated Hillary Clinton, but she got the nomination, so now I got to vote for her.
Yeah,
And
I
that
will
was
say.
yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, you can go ahead and we'll say
I was just gonna say that there's a slight difference though. Like the Republican Party had primaries,
right.
but you're right that and Trump, I think he won all of them. I don't know. Did
He won. He pretty much won
Nikki
all.
Haley get any? I know a
She
few
won
people got vote like
74% of
delegate
the vote.
votes or whatever.
Yeah, she won her, a nice share. Even when she dropped out, she was still winning a
Yeah,
pretty decent share of the delegate votes. And
yeah,
you know, she was thrown asunder just like Bernie Sanders was, just like, well, you know, technically, when, you know, Kennedy, and we're going to get to him, he was originally running as an independent Democratic leaning one, and he wanted to get in the Democratic primary. And there was a couple people that were actually in the Democratic primary in a few states with ballot access.
yeah.
But,
Uh,
yeah,
some guy participated in that free and equal debate. Like he was one of the hosts or something. I can't remember. But he won like the election in Guam or something, as the Democratic
yeah,
candidate.
that guy, yeah.
But Guam doesn't have any delegates. You know what I mean? It's weird. But
It's a U.S.
like
territory, not a
and
state.
yeah, in other states, they kicked him off the ballot though. They kicked Kennedy off the ballot, and now they've worked to kick Cornel West, who isn't even running under the Democrat ticket, off the ballot in several states. They've the Uniparty has worked, Republicans and Democrats worked to kick Libertarians off the ballot in the past.
Yeah.
Um, Ballot
Well,
access is a major problem here in the United States.
like I always say, there's roughly 2 to 4 things that Democrats and Republicans will always agree upon, and I'm going to touch just on 2 of them at the moment. That's war and rumors of war, and keeping the system that brought them to power intact. And you know, it's hard. It is almost impossible to get Democrats and Republicans to agree upon anything. And America, that's the thing about America that I simply don't understand is we become this primitive tribal nation where you either have to line up with one of these 2 parties. And like, and this came to me from Jesse the Body Ventura when he was governor of Minnesota. He said the difference between the United States and North Korea is in the United States you have one more choice, and it's the illusion of choice. Because in North Korea, you know, they'll have one person on the ballot, and you just have to mark that, or else they're coming from your family. You guys are gonna starve to death. Here in
Can you?
America, bitch, we got
Um,
2 choices.
yeah. Can you abstain from your vote in North Korea and just sit out, or do they make you
Um,
go vote?
at at your own peril, because you know this dude.
Oh,
Yeah, uh, that dude in North Korea actually fed his uncles to rabid dogs and watched it happen.
jeez.
You know, that's some Roman
Yeah.
Colosseum type shit where they
Game
used
of
to feed.
Thrones crap.
Yeah, well, I've never watched Game of Thrones. I'm sorry, America. That just I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. I just never got into Game of Thrones, and I
I
don't know
just
why.
watched it this year. We watched it for the first time.
Yeah.
Game of Thrones.
And it just amazes me that we will not stray far from the herd when it comes to our political choices. And I thought, moving on to one of our next topics, I thought RFK Jr. was going to be a guy that could shake up the system. You know, even though I disagree with him on a hell of a lot of shit, the pretty much the only thing I agree with RFK Jr. on is his position on the American food chain, because I think that's where Americans are truly lacking knowledge that there are 6 to 8 companies that control our food chain, and in order to do that, they need to make sure they maximize profits, and their profits being maximized are chemicals to keep their processed foods as fresh as possible for the longest period of time on your store shelves. And those chemicals aren't naturally occurring elements that our ancestors ate, even though we live longer than our ancestors, obviously. But having these this small gaggle of conglomerates that actually control our food supply is one of the most troubling things to me. And like I've had this discussion with several people. It's like they're talking about vaccines and the heart conditions associated with them. The number one killer in America is heart disease, and it's a combination of inactivity as Americans, as well as the fact that our food is shit. Most of our food wouldn't pass for food in Europe, and everybody likes to point to civilization being in Europe. Europeans roundly reject the food that Americans eat on multiple levels, from personal to government. And RFK touched on that, and that's what I truly liked him in that regard. He's not pro Second Amendment and liberty. That's where he lost me, because I'm pretty much a one issue voter. But what was your opinion on RFK and where he went with his campaign once he ended it?
So I think RFK was also good on like the food system, calling out the FDA, the CDC, exposing Anthony Fauci with his book. But he was good on the First Amendment stuff too. You know what I mean? Freedom of speech. And I think Thomas Massey shared an exchange in Congress where they're trying to accuse him of malinformation and this, that, and the other. And he holds his own going back and forth. I mean, he's an attorney. He's very successful. He's a smart guy. He's won cases on a lot of, environmental and vaccine lawsuits. Guy's got his stuff together in that regard. But you're right. Like my take is like I was happy that he was running, even though I wasn't a
A
supporter of
supporter of
his.
his,
But I was
but I was
excited to
excited to
see
see
someone
someone
challenging the
challenging.
two-party system and getting in the polls, raising money, getting support outside of the duopoly. It was encouraging. Now, I think it was wrong for the Libertarian Party to kind of show favoritism or whatever it seems like they were doing. Certain state affiliates, the Libertarian National uh, Committee, I don't think should have been using our assets and resources to help him. He wasn't the Libertarian nominee.
Mm.
Um, I've heard from some people that are just the pro business part of our party using him to help us raise money. Essentially, they were saying, like in the state of Florida, I don't know if it passed or not, but they were like, we could use his name, he can raise more money, and we're going to get 10% of what he raises. Like, I get it on a financial standpoint, but had he just went to state conventions and lobbied support and the delegates voted for him and he was our nominee, that's all he had to do. But he didn't. He just kind of did the California one. He went to Pork Fest. And then, he got what, like 2 delegate votes at the convention. He's not a libertarian, but I was happy that he was running because he was bringing some attention to the problems and the issues with ballot access. And I'm hoping after this, he's willing to expose how much it cost him to get on the number of states he was able to. Because guys spent a lot of money. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, expose that. Like, I think in America, if you're an American citizen, you should be able to run for office. You know what I mean? Like,
you should be able to without all that mumbo jumbo.
exactly. And I get it, like it costs money, and we would have a bazillion people be on a ballot. So maybe you got like several levels of primaries or something. I don't know. There's a way to, whittle it down to legitimate candidates, or you go with a different third party. But a lot of people, not, I guess, outside of the three major parties. Let's start calling the Libertarian Party the third major party. I don't know. Like, yeah, I was happy he was in it because he was being exposed to how difficult it was to run outside of the Uniparty. And I was hoping that he was going to expose that. Instead, he fell in line into the Uniparty. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So,
Well,
like, that's
yeah.
my issue.
I have a meme in a chamber that I'm preparing to drop on our
Pew pew.
page, but it basically says a anti-uniparty candidate drops out of race to endorse a uniparty candidate, and that's where I have a huge problem. And we kind of skipped over something because I wanted to talk about this before we talked about the election, and that's how the Libertarian Party at the National Convention gave a platform and stage to the Uniparty and did not properly go through. And this is just my humble opinion. I'm not saying this. My opinion is affiliated with Eric Parker or Michael White or anybody else that's going to be joining the Black Powder podcast, because we're truly trying to make this like a Wu-Tang Clan thing where we bring libertarians from all over the nation in, and we could spread the message of libertarianism, because we're not a we're one of the true national parties versus the Democrats and Republicans. They're more regional parties, and you need to really go back. If you need to rewind that and go back and listen to what I just said, Democrats and Republicans are regional. Libertarians are national. We represent over 33% of this populace, but the vast 30% of that populace is actually afraid to move forward because of these regional parties of Democrats and Republicans having a duopoly monopoly on the system, and why we have to support people like Michael White and make sure we put our money where our memes are. But the Libertarian Party giving a platform to Trump, Ramaswamy, JFK, they reached out to Joe Biden. You know, how many libertarians did the Democrat and Republican Party reach out to speak about the libertarian message um, for this presidential election?
Yeah.
And you have to say the answer is none, because if you were at either one of those conventions trying to preach a libertarian message, you're completely ineffective because you're in a vacuum chamber and your message will not go forward.
They are not going to platform one of us. They're going
No,
to, if their members started supporting one of us, they would try to kick them out of their executive committee. It happened to me in Jacksonville. Go to Florida Voice News or Google Florida Voice News, Eric Parker, the article pops up. Like, they literally tried kicking out members of their Republican Party because they posted positively about me on voter guides I might have made on. Shared voter guides on their social media or gave to my campaign before they were ever REC members. So the duopoly, the uniparty, is not going to support the libertarian message. What they
no,
will do is pander. And don't get me wrong, like Vivek Ramaswamy has a libertarian lean to his messaging, but I don't know that he's got that what do you say, lineage, experience, whatever. Like he talks the talk, but I don't know that he walks the walk. On
No,
some things, he talks
he
the talk.
does. Yeah. Um, I'm gonna make sure I completely clear
But
my. Yeah, go
but
ahead.
also I was perfectly fine with Thomas Massey being invited, so he gets a pass.
Thomas Massey. My problem with people like Thomas Massey, Rand Paul, and Ron Paul is they still have to run underneath the banner of the duopoly in order to get out there and get the money and all that stuff. And I understand, I truly do. But when you get up there and you're not calling into account, and the Paul's father and son and Massey, they've all done this, and they've gained traction with libertarians in doing this. But at the end of the day, the big money and the corporatism rules. Um, because I always say everybody has a lobbyist in every state capital in Washington D.C. as far as every business interest and global conglomerate. They all have access to these senators and representatives, except the American people who they were elected to represent, because it's all about money, and that's the corruption in the game that we have to truly understand. You know, and that's why you have to donate to Michael White so we can see what it's like to not have those interests served, because we already know, and that's the stupidest part about America is we already know we're going to get some bullshit from Democrats and Republicans. It's not a mystery. It's right in our freaking faces that nothing's going to change. Debt. If you're worried about national debt, name one modern contemporary Democrat or Republican that's addressed that. If you're worried about the size of the government, name one modern Democrat or Republican that has addressed that. It's not that hard to see this system is rigged. Like my guy Lars Mapstead always says, this system is rigged. And until we can get a honest third party, fourth party, I'd like to see multiple parties
Yeah.
like in other nations. But until we can get to that point where the parties can actually have to tell you the truth about what they're going to do, actually prove that they're doing what they said they were going to do, and bring forth the best ideas, we're not going to have a true republic. We don't live in a republic right now. And every democracy is mob rule. And so everybody is saying that Trump is going to destroy democracy. Actually, I'm kind of fine with it because, I don't want the mob to rule. And right now, the mob is this left hand and right hand on a beast of tyranny that doesn't give a flying F about you or I. It just wants to make sure the machine keeps getting fed from the blood, sweat, and tears of the American people. And that's where we fail to recognize what we're actually doing. And one of the people that I find perplexing in that, and I know you want to bring her up, was Tulsi. What's her last name?
Gabbard.
Yeah. And she started off as a liberal Democrat that was in the army officer. She was officer, right?
Yeah, I think in the Army Reserves. I think she still is in the Army Reserves,
I
but
believe, I think she is too. But I find her a paradox as far as politics is concerned, because she went from hard left to seemingly hard right, and I don't blame her, because that's what America does to Americans. Is it typically brings us to the worst of the worst, because we can't have civil discussions anymore.
so I guess my take on Tulsi is like, as soon as she started calling out uh the former, I don't know if it was the former or current chair of the DNC during her
Yeah,
campaign, like they essentially shunned her. You know what I
Well,
mean?
that's the
Like,
same thing that
well,
happened to,
and then
yeah,
like ended. I'm not gonna say ruined, but ended Kamala Harris's campaign that year,
she did.
2016 or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, and ever since then, she's been blacklisted, and the DNC isn't gonna let her run for run for anything without being primaried. But it's also because she was anti-war, so she went against, the war machine
yeah,
on the debate stage on a national level. While I think it's unique, also continuing to serve in the military, which a lot of
yeah.
people
That's no good.
would call that hypocritical. I think outside a libertarian perspective, that's a good thing. I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like, have
We should
somebody.
be on for,
I,
yeah,
I,
we should be on for war.
so I know guys that are still active duty Navy that became whistleblowers over the vaccine mandates. They refused to get them. They got their religious exemption, and they were like a medical officer. And then they continued to expose the corruption within the Department of the Navy. You know what I mean? If we're gonna have a military, I would like to have people that push back against the system in there. You know what I mean? So, and I'm a veteran, and I Army Reserves also, so I never became an officer, but still, like,
Yeah,
th- like you said, she's kind of a complex situation. I could see like she kind of went silent after that campaign. I'm pretty sure she voluntarily, I don't know if she got primaried and that's why she didn't keep running for Congress out of Hawaii, but she was a congresswoman. But
well,
like
I think she lost
the
a lot of money.
establishment, yeah, the establishment was no longer going to back her. So she would have got primaried either way, regardless. They would have never let her win another election after she threw darts at, the DNC. And that's the thing is like I do feel like in our Libertarian Party, like we and you might want to, I don't know if you want to call them out any more than we've already have, but we hold them accountable. Whenever our Libertarian Party, the leadership in our National Party does something we don't agree with, they get hell for it.
Yeah.
And rightfully so. And then I don't think that they, outside of Karen Ann Harlow's, try to kick anyone out of the party. So, you know,
Well,
but who
I'm
knows?
not saying this is the end all be all on the Tulsi situation, but when she got in a beef with Hillary, it was over
Yeah.
because Hillary called her a Russian plant, and Hillary is the establishment. And I could see she. I want to think Tulsi thought her life was in danger when she challenged Hillary Clinton,
Did you
and
see Tulsi had a letter or a news story about, it was on something. I don't know where I read it, about where she made it on like a special list going through security at airports.
yeah, and
Yeah.
the Clintons are notorious for making sure their enemies um, cease to exist. And I'm
That's
pretty
where,
sure,
man.
yeah, I'm pretty sure Tulsi touched on that as well. And I'm not saying she did this on purpose, but she probably went to the other side to make sure. This is my conspiracy theory. She went to the other side to make sure if she was Hillary Clinton, that Hillary Clinton would be implicated in her getting
Ah.
Hillary Clinton.
Like
And
just
it's a survival
uh
mechanism because you
yeah.
can't go from a hardcore liberal anti-war to hardcore right winger, and then I still think she's anti-war, and I don't understand how you find that on a Republican side because both Democrats and Republicans are selective war, but war in general
Yeah.
because there's some wars they like. Republicans don't like the war in Ukraine, but they love the war in Israel.
Isn't it
Democrats don't
funny
like.
how
Yeah,
all you have to say is I don't want to send any more of our taxpayer dollars to Ukraine and you're a Russian asset. That's all you got
yeah,
to say.
yeah.
Like uh pretty sure she wouldn't still be in the Army Reserves with a top secret clearance if she was a Russian asset. Well,
Yeah, and if you say that you're not comfortable sending 1,000-pound GPS bombs to Israel, then you're a I don't know who left wing.
Hamas puppet.
There, yeah, and I'm not going to get into
Uh,
that because I have my opinions on that. I believe only thing I would say I believe every people on Earth have the right to self determination. That's as far as I'm going to go on that.
yeah.
But we have to be more consistent with being American, and and as we start to wrap this up. Um, I was telling somebody today that I taught my son that term consistent because he's always loved baseball, and in baseball you have to be consistent in everything you do. And I just said, I you need to understand the term consistent and live by that principle. And if us as Americans, if we could be consistent in the liberty message, the do no harm message, the live free or die message, we would be better off as a nation and not let these people lead us into oblivion with these culture wars and everything else associated with this tribalism of our current two-party political system. And that's what I would want to impart upon Americans on this episode of the Black Part of Podcast is stop pandering to these people who don't have your best interests in mind.
And
Well,
go support Michael White.
that's at the end of the show. Our end message, aside from everything we discussed and talked about, the most important message of this podcast is, and let me bring this up one more time.
Is there any other hot topics we skipped over that I think we
No, we
covered?
covered all of our agreed upon topics,
Didn't
but
you want to throw shade at the LNC for a minute? No, I'm just kidding.
we're gonna get to that. You know, I
Later.
just want to say real quick though that regardless of what a lot of people say, I still will be casting my vote for Chase Oliver, and that's based on I've met this man in person. I sat down and talked to him, and I know he wants the best for all Americans. And a lot of people can disagree with his positions on a few items, but for me, he's the only pro 2A candidate running, and he's the only pro liberty candidate running. And a lot of people that talk shit about him and say they're voting for Trump, you've already saw what he did. He was, aside from his judicial appointees, and that's on the judicial branch, but on the legislative and executive branch, he was one of the worst people for the Second Amendment that has ever sat in the Oval Office. And I'm a one issue voter. My one issue is liberty, and it's all encompassing and it's absolute. And the Second Amendment means probably the most out of the amendments to me. If you're not absolutely pro 2A, Marcus should have a M60 with, and the government should provide me with a minimum of 15,000 rounds for my M60. That's where I think socialism would work best if the government gave out ammo. If
There you go.
yeah, if and we do have a socialist government, so don't come at me for that. But this is the socialist government that we're living in right now. If we're voting on what means the most to us, I'm voting for Chase Oliver because I believe he will bring the most quality to that office. And I know it's a long shot. It is what it is. But the Libertarian Party, I'm still voting Libertarian, even though after the national convention, I felt like they left me. But
Dude,
yeah,
that's for another, might be for another episode, but
we'll do that later.
yeah, that I was frustrated at LNC too, and we can talk about it next time
All right.
or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah,
We don't
Eric,
have
do you
to.
have, do you
Whatever.
have a closing statement that you would like to say, my brother?
Hey, I'm just happy to be back. Sorry for the hiatus we've all been on. We're not going anywhere. We just got to
No.
figure out timing, schedule.
Yeah.
Do you want to mention the guests next week? I don't know if that's set in
Uh,
stone.
we're going to probably come back with a libertarian candidate next week. I'm not going to announce it just yet, but I'm certain it's probably going to be on Labor Day, and it's going to be a tad bit earlier. But we're going to have, going forward from here to November, libertarian candidates running for office, selling their message, selling why you should vote libertarian. And I just want to tell all of my people out there, stop being scared. Because when you say libertarians can't win, you're saying you won't vote for libertarians. And no, they can't win when you won't vote for a libertarian. So stop with the bullshit excuses. Stop with the bullshit memes that you're in the libertarian, but you're voting for the uniparty. Let's just stop all the BS and start moving forward with the incremental changes that we need for our society until we actually can have a viable option that holds this duopoly accountable. Don't complain about the outcome because you're not doing anything to change the income. With that being said, we're going to end this podcast as we usually do with this great phrase. And Eric, I want you to say the second part because I'm going to say the first part. And you know what
All
I'm
right.
about to say. Live free.
Or die.
And this is the Black Powder Podcast. Thank you for listening and watching. And please donate to nwforliberty.com/donate. Donate to Michael White. One love, my homies.